Hello, George Shell here from Service Department News, and today I'm talking to Adam Lowenthal from Saxbury. Adam, hi, how are you?
Hi, George. Yeah, well, thank you. Well,
Good. Adam, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your business in general?
so obviously, not being able to physically work with my amazing business partner Ben Davis and other colleagues is obviously very sad. But I think that's one thing, is that technology has made things so easy. And although it's not quite business as usual, because I think I'd be lying to say that, I think we've remained very busy during this time. I think just this week we've pitched virtually over video calls on two new projects in London, one in Glasgow. So there's plenty of things going on. We have, however, of course, all of this, we've been very conscious about our clients and the contacts across the sector. So we've been in touch with, let's say, most of the key ones, certainly, to see if we can give some helpful, free professional advice to try and help problem solve whatever they're going through at the moment, which they found very useful. We've also introduced a discovery call, we call it, which is basically an opportunity for developers, investors and operators who perhaps we haven't spoken to in the past, to organise a video call with one of our directors and explore how we may be able to assist and navigate through this rather tricky time. So so business is as usual as we can make it, but we seem to be busy, so that's good news.
Mm-hmm. So we know that operators are having a tough time at the moment, but they're obviously looking ahead, as beyond the current situation, as well as trying to get through this. So most of the projects you're working on are going ahead. Have you seen any being put on hold?
Yeah. So I think due to the nature of our business, and that's where we're working on projects which are a year to potentially 3 years away from practical completion, when hopefully the world will be a healthier place. Most of our developer clients are still very happy to continue the process, albeit that things have slowed down because people are not necessarily all together. And so that's the developer side, and the operators are still keen to commit to leases and management contracts in the future. I think that that might be slightly different if you were to talk to me about projects that we have really put on ice, and that's where there have been residential blocks, for lease next month. I think you can just sort of, there's no choice but to put those on ice, and operators are not obviously willing to commit to anything like that, and the developers and investors are not expecting them to either. So those ones have, but the big projects that we are sort of our norm, they are very much still underway. We've got two major apart hotels in London where we're very deep into the legal work, and both sides are absolutely keen to progress and sign within the next few weeks. So that's great. And a very big apart hotel scheme in Birmingham as well, which actually the heads of terms are being negotiated as we speak. So it seems that there's an example. Those projects are really sort of continuing as if this wasn't going on. But it would be naive to say that the whole sector is carrying on as usual, because we are speaking to obviously a number of the funds out there who historically were getting quite involved into the apart hotel and service apartment sector, and they have definitely told me that we're going to have to put on ice any new projects that we may have been looking at, and that's from the investment side, looking at potentially forward funding or forward committing. So I think that will inevitably have an effect on the developer clients that we're dealing with. So as some of these projects do get closer to fruition, those developer clients may start to get a little nervous about committing to the occupational solution, i.e. the lease or the management contract, if they haven't got the exit lined up. And if the exit, i.e. the investors have just said, hang on, give us a few months, then we might not get, that occupational solution concluded. So wait and see. But certainly the key projects that we're working on, as I mentioned earlier, they're very much full steam ahead.
Mm. And you mentioned you're speaking to operators to give them advice to get through the immediate future and the current situation. What are you telling them? What tips are you giving them to get through this?
I think the first thing is organise a discovery call with us, see if we might be able to help. And then really, I think the first thing is to look at the government schemes. I think the government's doing a pretty good job, and a couple of your podcasts have also mentioned that. And I think they're doing a pretty good job in trying to help help businesses out there ease their cash flow. I think the next is obviously to discuss the situation with your landlords and property partners. There are a number of government schemes that the real estate owner may be able to use, and ultimately, hopefully pass those on to the operators and tenants. I'm not suggesting there's an opportunity for rent free, but perhaps rent holidays that can be paid back over the rest of the lease. And yeah, I mean, I know that in previously you've also mentioned that a few operators who have been helping out the NHS by providing accommodation for the key workers at a highly subsidised rate, which clearly helps the operator cover some of those costs. Another thing that we're looking at, landlords and operators we're speaking to at the moment are actually using this period as an opportunity to upgrade their assets and operations, because the construction industry is currently still open for business. Some landlords have said, hey, look, this is an opportunity for us to do those upgrades that we were thinking about doing. And let's face it, hopefully there won't be another time like this where you'll have an empty building without having to forego income from paying guests.
Mm-hmm.
So these landlords are seeing this as, okay, this is the situation we're all in, and discussing with the operators, how about we do those upgrades that we talked about, so that when there is the bounce back, which is inevitable, we're ready to go.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk at the moment about the new normal, whatever that may be. How do you think the virus and its effects will change our sector and the wider travel and hospitality industries?
Yeah, so I think obviously I look at it from a real estate perspective. So I think some operators who are currently and will at the end of this be quite severely burnt, I think are going to be pretty scared of taking large master leases without including some kind of mechanism or clause if something like this was to happen again. And I think we're going to start seeing a bit of that being included in a lot of these agreements. I think the small scale sort of service departments operators on a rent-to-rent model may just die out, as the margins have always been pretty tight. So any minor downturn in occupancy or rate, let alone a major one like we've seen, is pretty devastating. I think at the end of all of this, I think there'll be a build up of necessary business travel that will recover first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the leisure. But I'm concerned because there'll still be travel bans between countries, and therefore I think we'll initially see a pickup of the national business travel, staycations, relocations, etc., and then the international business come, and finally it will be the international travel. So yeah, that's I think that's going to be the order of how it recovers, but it will recover. Remember that people want to go on holiday, people want to travel and meet people for business, etc. I think it will this might just be a slight delay. And I think my final real point was really, two final points is that I think because we've all started to get used to working from home, and at least doing sort of virtual meetings and presentations and such, I imagine a lot of businesses and employers will say, do I need to really travel as much as I used to? Can I do a lot of it or some of it from home or from my office in my hometown? And I think that will obviously have a knock-on effect to our sectors, especially the service department and the hotel, because that's predominantly been underpinned by corporate travel. And finally, I think one thing that's really become, at the forefront of our minds right now is wellness and health. I think, never before have even the healthiest people become even more conscious and about this. And I think that's got to be present throughout the whole travel industry, whether that's from, getting onto the bus in the morning or getting onto an airplane, arriving in your hotel or service apartment. It's got to be present throughout. And I think people will be conscious about air quality, about water, the water that's coming out the tap, the cleanliness of an airplane seat. You name it, we're going to be paranoid about it. So I think that's going to change the way we travel post pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And on a personal level, Adam, how do you think it will change how you and your colleagues at Saxbury work?
Well, look, property's tangible, so it always has been and always will be. So it does involve physically seeing sites, locations, assets, and most importantly, I think meeting with people. There's only so many video calls you can do with a new client or an agent friend or something, until you really want to actually sit down and have a good chat, have lunch or whatever you're doing. So I think we're going to be looking forward to getting back to the office, because however much I may like to work in a t-shirt from home, we're looking forward to being back in the office in the West End. As I said, catching up with our clients and friends in the business. But I think, as I said earlier, we are getting used to working remotely, right? And I believe a lot of businesses, including ours, will incorporate this into their new way of business. It's likely that will reduce office space, and well, not just us, but many businesses I think out there, because of that. Because we don't necessarily all need to be working at our desk every day. And this will obviously have a positive effect on our health, pollution in the city and the country. I think commuting time and costs, and hopefully give everyone a better sort of quality of life. So I think that's a sort of silver lining to this. But look, I think most businesses will have new policies, and will to try and keep the team safe going forward, whether they're commuting, traveling for business, etc., or just simply in the office. And we'll have a new norm as we keep talking about this, and we'll embrace it for the sake of all our health and wellness.
Great stuff, Adam. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Stay safe.